All right, so welcome back to part 2 of our bug invasion tutorial. So part 1, we learned about some of the basics of Gamemaker, learned how to make sprites and sounds and backgrounds, objects, rooms. Rooms are basically where our stage is and where our game starts from. So we have the setup where we have spiders and we have other bugs, and we're trying to kill the other bugs and try to avoid the spiders. And every time we click on one of the other bugs, our score goes up, and if we click on a spider, then it just restarts the game basically. So we added some sound effects there. What I want to start with is adding another sprite, just to kind of review that again. So we've only added a spider and a cockroach. Let's add another bug to our, or another bad guy, I guess, to our program. So I want you to go through that process yourself. So we're going to create a sprite. We're going to load a sprite. In this case, let's select the scorpion. You can see that the scorpion is massive here, right? It's really big. So again, we could take, and this is also, you can see the background is not transparent. So this is kind of right off of, grabbing something from Google or something like that. And so let's try to see if we can edit this within Gamemaker. And we could also open it up in Photoshop and definitely magnetic lasso this and make it smaller. But let's see what we can do within Gamemaker itself. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to click on Edit Sprite, and I'm going to click on Transform, and we're going to scale this to something much smaller. So let's make it like 25%. And you can see that that did make it smaller. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Crop. So let's crop this with a border size of 0. That made it smaller. Now let's see if we can. Our background here is not transparent. You can see it's a white background. So can we make this transparent? Something actually kind of cool in Gamemaker is you can click on Image and click on Erase a color. And that sort of will make a certain color transparent. So if I click on Erase a color, I can select the color I want to erase. You can see it erases most of the white background. There's some little kind of little things still on the background here, some watermarks and whatnot. If you click on the tolerance level, you can just kind of increase the tolerance. You can see what is left of your image. So this is kind of a cool tool. Make the tolerance up a little bit and find something that looks good. And we're going to say OK. And that did a pretty good job. Now we also want to make this smaller, so let's go ahead and scale this again down to at least half. Let's try half, and again crop this, border size 0, and we're going to click OK. And there is our next bug. Now we can make it even smaller if it looks kind of large on our stage, but let's just say that's good. So we're going to say OK on that. I'm going to name this the Scorpion. And again, when we make the sprite, we can't add the sprite to the stage unless we have an object. So let's create an object, Scorpion, and select the Scorpion sprite. And we're going to do similar things to the cockroach sprite. So we're going to have create an event. On creation, we're going to move this thing in a random spot. Maybe we'll make the scorpion a little bit faster, so I'll say speed is 8. We're going to add an event for collisions. So if it collides with the wall, we're going to do the same thing we've always been doing, which is to bounce off the wall or bounce off a solid object. We're going to add an event for the mouse click. So left pressed, what does that do? We're going to add one to score. Go to score. We're going to add 1 to score. We're going to make it relative. say OK. We're gonna delete the instance. So if we go to main 1, we can select this little recycling bin or trash bin or whatever you want to call it. We can add that to destroy itself, and we can also add the sound as before. So I'm going to click on the sound object, and we're going to click on squish, and we're going to say OK on that. Now, how do we add objects? I'm going to make sure that this is saved as the correct name. So Sprite Scorpion, got that. I'm going to say OK on that. Now, one issue that I ran into as I was going through this is something with the sprite. So if you go back to Scorpion, click on the Scorpion sprite if you followed the same steps that I did. And one thing that you're going to have to do if you resize within here is that you should click on where it says origin, you should click on center. And yours, if you didn't adjust yours, it might be like some really large negative number or something really crazy. You want to click on center so the origin of this object is in the center there. So make sure you do that and then click OK. Now back to the room here, I can add some scorpions. So I want to make sure that I have the scorpion selected, and I'm going to click on OK. And those are pretty big scorpions, so I'm probably going to have to adjust that again. And let's add some of those guys in there, and let's go ahead and hit play and make sure that works. So now I got a lot of stuff happening here. I'm going to try to click on the scorpions or the beetles without clicking on the spiders. And there we go. If I click on a spider, it restarts my game as before. So again, if I find that I can get my image editing done right in Gamemaker, then why not, right? For a lot of the simple things that you need to do, Gamemaker is pretty good at. Photoshop is always there, and there are other editors you can use. But so the next thing that we want to do here is progress the game. So let's say, our score is being increased when I click on these guys, and I restart the game with the spider. So we want to, once we get to a certain score, we want to advance to the next level, say. So, and maybe we want to display our score as well. So let's start there. What we're going to do is we're going to add a new object. For each room, as you start Gamemaker, it might be a good idea to add one of these objects for each room. So the room that I currently have is the kitchen. What I'm going to do is create a new object that is called it's object, and I'm going to make a controller. I'm just going to call it controller. Controller, and this is for the kitchen. Now, with this object, I don't need a sprite. In fact, it's going to be an invisible object, but it's just going to have a bunch of code in it that controls that specific room and does certain things. So we have this, it's object, it's controller kitchen, and on, let's see here, there is, and I want you to click on this add event, there is a step function, or a step event. I want you to click on the step event and click on step. So what the step event is as you, it's kind of like the game loop. After each step, as this program is running, think of it as like 30 times per second, right? It depends on how we put the speed of that room in. But this step event is going to be called over and over and over and over again. It's very similar to kind of like an infinite loop when we were using Scratch. So this thing is going to be called a lot. And so if we want to be checking something over and over and over again, this could be a place where we do it. Okay, we could also do it when we actually increase the score, but for this I want to demonstrate what the step function can do. So what I want to do here is, in the step function, I'm going to check if my score is, greater than some number. I'm going to put an if statement in here. So I want you to go to score on this side right here. And you can see this left one was setting the score. The middle one is going to be checking the score. So if I select this and drop it, the name of that tile is called test score. And that's sort of like your if statement. We're going to say, if the score is, and let's just say larger than, why don't we just go with like 10, then we'll say okay. And then what I like to do here is, if we go to control here, and we can kind of put a start block and an end block. I like to do this just out of habit, putting one of these start blocks and end blocks here to sort of separate the code inside of the if statement. So if the score is larger than 10, what are we going to do? So in our case, we could just advance to the next level. We could advance to the next room, basically. That room could be, you know, the windscreen. It could be just the next level in my game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's see, where is it? Go to main 1, and there is a little subsection for rooms. And there is one where there's a little arrow to the right, and that's just to advance to the next room. So we're going to do this. We're going to drop that inside of that block, and that's all we're going to do. So if the score is larger than 10, we're going to go to the next room. Now, we only have one room here. So what happens when we get a score larger than 10 and there's only one room? Well, we're going to figure that out as we come across it. Another thing that we want to do here is maybe actually draw the variable onto the screen. So a lot of people want to do this just to see the score, kind of like what Scratch does. So one way to do this is just to click on Add Event, and we're going to go to Draw, click on Draw, and click on Draw GUI, G-U-I. So that's going to draw something to the screen. And Draw GUI is basically going to continually draw whatever we put inside of the draw to the screen. And what we want to do here is go back to Score, and the third one here is going to be to draw the value of score. So we're going to drop this in here, and it says draw score, and then it also gives me an X, it gives me a Y, and it says a caption, right? So 0, 0 is actually the top left of the screen. If I want to change this and put it to a different position on the screen, I can change these X or Y coordinates. For now, I'm just going to leave it in the top left and say OK there. Let's go ahead and see what happens with our code now. So I'm going to hit, take that back. Let's say OK first on that. This is our controller for the kitchen. It's going to be an invisible object. So we're going to say OK, and now it's there. Now, one thing that we have to do now, though, is we're going to have to add this controller object to this room. So this is the kitchen room, or the first level, whatever you call it. I still have to add this controller to the room. So I'm going to have, go ahead in the room, select the controller, and then I'm going to click in the room, and it doesn't really matter where it is. I'm going to put it on the top right there, and it has a little question mark there. And that's okay. That's the controller. And now it's part of your room. So that code that we just made is going to be running when we start the room. Okay, you need to do that, otherwise the code here is not going to be attached to that room. So let's go ahead and test the code. So we run it. You can see here now that at the very least, it is writing our score up here. Now it's in black ink, so maybe we change that color, or we move it to somewhere else on the screen, but you can still see it. So if I click on these bugs, I gotta start over. You can see the score is increasing, and I only made 9 bugs, so that's a problem. So we're gonna have to fix that. We're gonna fix that really easily, in my case, by just adding a couple more bugs, so I can complete the level. So there we go. Try that again and see when we get to 10 what happens. Now that roach there got stuck because I put it inside the wall. That's okay. So we're at 9, we're going to hit 10, and then we're going to hit 11 right there. And when we get to 11, it does try to go to the next room, but we actually get our first error here. It says code error, and it says fatal error in action number 1 of step event 0. So error messages are really important, and for new programmers, usually what happens is you don't really look at the error message. You just say, oh, there was an error. What do I do? And you start asking the teacher, you ask me, you ask your friend. It's really important to start to, when you get an error message, read it and really think about what it's saying here. So it says there's an error. It tells you where the error is. It says it's in action number 1 of a step event. Remember, it was in our step function, or our step event. And it tells you which object there's a problem in. It says for the object controller kitchen, there is a problem. And it gives you, in this case, it gives you a pretty clear explanation of what happened. It says moving to next room after the last room, and that was where the error was. And it doesn't say things like there is no room, right? It just tells you where that is, and sometimes you need to interpret that and say, oh, it went to the next room and then it crashed. What's the problem? It's because we don't have a next room, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. We're going to click on abort. We're going to make another room here. So let's go ahead and click on rooms and create another room. And this will be sort of our level 2. So let's say if we create a room, let's go to settings and let's say room, and let's just say this is another part of the kitchen. Let's say kitchen 2. Now when you extend this tutorial, you can put different, you can add some different sprites, and maybe you make a different room. The next level maybe is in your bedroom, or wherever it is. For here, I'm just going to keep it similar, right? And so we're going to do very similar things to the first one just to keep the tutorial a little shorter. I'm going to click on backgrounds, and I'm going to put the same background that I had there to begin with. I'm also going to add those tiles, those images. So if I go to objects, I'm going to go to the walls, and I'm going to hold down Control Shift and start dragging some boundaries here for this new room here. And let's say that, you can certainly make it a little bit different, put a couple different obstacles in there so that you get a lot of different movements. Whatever. I'm going to put just some different boundaries in there. And let's put in here, I'm not going to create any more sprites, but let's put in level 2. Oops. Delete that. I'm going to put in some spiders here. I'm going to put in more spiders. And let's put in some, cockroaches. Now I probably would, if I was going back on this, I probably would go back to my sprites and make my sprites smaller because they're kind of ginormous. Or maybe you want to leave the cockroaches kind of big like this, but change some of the other ones. Or maybe leave the spiders kind of big because that's going to make it harder to not click on them. Whatever the case, feel free to make those adjustments. So I'll add that. I'll add a couple scorpions, So same thing happens here, right? Now we have another room, and we've named it Kitchen 2, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to click on the check box here and say OK. I'm going to say yes on that. And so now I have 2 rooms. And I don't have a controller. I don't have a controller for Kitchen 2. I only have a controller for Kitchen 1. So let's click on, let's test this out, see what happens. So we should be at level 1. And the problem before was we could not advance to the next level or the next room. So now if we get to 11 points, and there it is. Now you can see we got to another level. Now I have some problems here because the sprites that I have in here were already colliding with these walls, so they're not moving because they kind of got stuck there. That's just a side issue, nothing to worry about here, but our code logic did work, right? So I can still get points. Notice here that the score is not being displayed on this level, so we can fix those issues. When I do click on the spider, it does still restart the game though, right? So I have somewhat of a working game here. I have some objects here. I have a backstory. I have some sprites. I got movement. Collision detection is happening. My score increases and I can advance to a new level. And when I click on a spider, then the game restarts. So let's get out of this and let's fix a few things here. So let's say we, after the second level, right? After the second level, we're gonna win the game. Okay, so if I click on the second room, here's my second room. There is no controller, and also I'm not drawing the score here. So we're gonna create another object. Create object. In this case, it's gonna be obj, and this is gonna be kitchen2. Or let's say controller for the kitchen 2 or level 2. There's going to be no sprite there. And let's go ahead and add the things that we added before. So we're going to add a draw command. We're going to hit a draw GUI, and we're going to draw the score. So go to score, and this one right here. Keep it in the same spot. Now again, the score, the built-in score variable is a global variable. So what should be happening is when I go to the next level, the value of score will remain at 10, right? And then it'll continue on. It should go to 11, 12, etc. So to beat the game, let's say we go to do our step event again, and go to step. In the step function, or the step event, let's do an if statement. So go back to score, and we're going to test the value of this variable. So we're going to test the score. We're going to see if it is 20. We'll just say equal to. In this case, we'll say equal to 20. Then we're going to go to control, and we're going to do a start and end block. And if it is 20, let's say we go to the next room one more time. So we go to main 1 and just go to the next room here. Now, of course, we're going to have to create a last room, but we'll get to that. And let's see, I think we're good with that. So let's say OK. Now remember, in kitchen 2, okay, this which is already open for me, I then need to add this controller to kitchen 2, and it's not added right now. So I'm going to click on this. Got to make sure that I add the correct one, not the original one, but the second controller, the kitchen 2. And I'm going to go ahead and just click this in the top right where I normally put them. And now that should be running in the background. Now lastly, we want to have one more room, and let's just say it's the end screen. So let's create one more room, and we're going to have to create one more background. And let's just make a windscreen. So we're going to make a really, really dull windscreen here just to save a little time. But let's click on a new background. Let's say right click, create background. In this case, let's say BG windscreen. And let's say we don't load it. Let's just say edit the background. and we're just going to make a quick background image here. So first of all, this thing is really small. We're going to click on transform, and we're going to click on scale. Actually, take that back. We're going to click on image. What am I looking for here? Resize canvas. Let's go to resize canvas. And make sure you deselect keep aspect ratio, and we're going to change the pixels here to what our room size is, which is going to be 640 by 480. 640 by 480. We're going to say OK on that. And then here's a screen, so we're going to do something simple. We're going to use a paint bucket here, and let's just color it. So if we click on these colors here, we can change the color, and I can just hit OK, and now I have a blue background. Let's say I want to add text. There's a little text option here. If I click on it, you want to go down to the font size on the bottom and select something kind of large. Let's say it's 48. And the color here, I'm going to select as black, and I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to say, you win. Ooh, and I can't see it. I'm not sure why I can't see it. I think I might need to actually change this color right here, the left color. So let me try that again. If I click on that, I'm going to click on black. And now you can see it changed to you win. And that's it. I'm going to say OK on that. And we're going to make one more room. So let's right click and create room. And if I go to settings, I'm going to make this room, and I'm going to say windscreen. And I'm going to go to my backgrounds and select this background here, which I didn't name properly, but it just says you win. Let's say I want to add one more sound to this. So there should have been a sound there in the resources. If I hit create sound, I'm going to find one more sound. And there should be one, victory is mine, right here. And that is from Stewie. So we're going to click on that one. I'm going to name this sound, and I'm just going to say victory. And say OK. So I got another sound here. Now when I get to this screen here, I want to play that sound. So I need some sort of object to insert code in here. So the only thing I'm going to do here is just create not a visible object, but a controller. One last controller for this windscreen. So let's create an object controller. So I'm going to right click, create object. In this case, this will be obj object controller, and this is for the windscreen. There is no sprite, so I'm going to say when this object is created, or when I get to that last level, I'm going to play that sound. So let's say we go to, where is that sound? I'm going to play the victory sound. And what else am I going to do here? So now if you go to sound, you can test this out. I'm going to keep this as true. I'm going to loop this sound just to test that out. And so it should keep continually playing this sound. I'm going to say OK on that. Now, I could leave it like that. I do want to talk, or at least introduce, what an alarm is, because this is a very important feature of Gamemaker. So what I'm going to do is also in the create, I'm going to set an alarm. So here, if you go to the create, and you go to, let's see here, main 2, you can see something called timing. And this first one is going to allow me to set an alarm. So I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to set an alarm, and I'm going to select the number of steps that this alarm is going to take. So just imagine that you're setting your own alarm, right? If you're going to set an alarm, you got to set it for a specific time, and then that alarm is going to count down. It's going to count down, and once it hits 0, it's going to trigger some sort of event. So you can kind of think of this as some sort of timer. That once it gets down to 0, it's going to broadcast this message that alarm, or this specific one called alarm 0, has just gone off. And then I can use that timer or that specific broadcast to then do something else. And you'll see once you create more programs, you're going to start to use these alarms more and more frequently because they're very useful. So the place where we put steps, remember I said that our room was set up to be a speed of 30. I believe that means in this case that there are 30 steps in 1 second, right? So you kind of have to do the math there. So I can just put 30. You can also just put math statements in here as well. So if I want to go 10 seconds, I could put 300, or I could just say 30 and then times however many seconds I want this alarm to go off of. So I could say 10 seconds. Of course, I could just put 300 there as well. So now if I click OK, when I create this object, when that windscreen starts, then this alarm is going to start. And it's going to start counting down from 300. And that's about 10 seconds. It should be about 10 seconds. And once that gets to 0, it's going to broadcast that alarm 0 has gone off. And so we have the option here of catching that. So what we can do here, if you go to add event, you can see that there are events for an alarm right here. So I'm going to click on alarm, and that one that I used is alarm 0. So I'm going to click on alarm 0. And so I'm saying when this alarm 0 goes off, then I can do something. Okay, in this case, I'm going to do something very simple, and we're going to end the game. So I'm going to go to game right here under main 2. In this case, I'm going to just shut off the game. Now I could also just restart, but I'm just going to test it. We haven't tested this out yet, so I'm just going to say end the game just to see if it works. Alright, so now I'm going to say OK on this. Now remember, in this windscreen, we actually have to add that controller, otherwise nothing's really running there. So we're going to go to Objects. We're going to click on the controller for this room, the windscreen, and I'm just going to click up here in the top right and add that little object so that it's running in the background. Alright, hopefully this all works. Let's give it one last test and see what we got here. So we run it, we compile it, we got to get to 10 here, so start over. Level 2. And you can see the score here is at 17. So that score has carried over. And once we get to 20, it should take us to the windscreen.
Victory is mine. Yes. Victory is mine.
And you can see this is working. We have the sound that's playing. It's saying victory is mine. A little bit annoying, but after 10 seconds there, and that seemed like a little less, that could have been 10 seconds. After that happened, the game did completely close out. So when you put on end game, that completely shuts down the whole program and just takes it off. So that's it for part 2. There is a whole lot more that we can put in there, of course. But that's just the very beginning, and it should kind of give you a springboard to start to explore and add a bunch of stuff in here. So that's it for the tutorial. Your extension here, if you look on the Canvas page, is probably going to be to add more on to this little tutorial, add more rooms, add some levels, add some more sprites, and tinker some more with this setup.